Sarah tightened the straps on her backpack as she stepped out of her beat-up pickup truck. The mountain air was crisp and pine-scented, a sharp contrast to the suffocating city heat she'd left behind. This cabin was supposed to be her sanctuary, a place to escape the noise and chaos of her former life. Yet even as she looked around at the dense forest surrounding the clearing, a prickling unease crept under her skin. Her cabin stood at the edge of the property, an old wooden structure with weathered beams and a stone chimney that still held faint traces of smoke from previous occupants. The place had a rustic charm, but something felt off. As Sarah unlocked the creaking front door and stepped inside, she caught movement out of the corner of her eye, a shadow slipping between the tall pines at the edge of the clearing. She blinked, and it was gone. Maybe just a deer, or maybe not. That night, as a cold wind rattled the windows and sent dead leaves skittering across the porch, Sarah lay awake. The silence was broken only by the occasional distant howl of a coyote. Then, just as she was drifting off, a faint tapping came at the cabin door, a soft, rhythmic knocking that stopped abruptly before she could open her eyes. Heart pounding, she grabbed the flashlight from the bedside table and crept to the window. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but swaying branches and the empty forest floor. Whoever had knocked was long gone. Morning brought little relief. On the porch, Sarah found a white envelope sealed with a crimson wax stamp. The letters HOA were stamped boldly on the front. Her hands trembled as she broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside. Dear resident, this letter serves as official notice from the Evergreen Mountain Homeowners Association. Your cabin violates multiple zoning regulations, including unauthorized construction on protected land. You are hereby required to vacate the premises within 30 days. Failure to comply will result in legal action. Sarah's eyes narrowed. She'd carefully reviewed every legal document before buying the cabin. No zoning violations. No protected land. Nothing. This had to be a mistake. She stepped outside, the letter clenched in her fist, and scanned the clearing again. From between the trees, she thought she saw a figure, just a silhouette, watching her. When she blinked, it vanished. Word of Sarah's arrival had spread fast through the mountain community, but she hadn't expected immediate hostility. Yet, it was clear the HOA was determined to push her out before she even had a chance to settle in. Determined to fight back, Sarah headed to the local library to research the HOA's authority and bylaws. She wanted answers, and quickly. The peaceful retreat she'd dreamed of was suddenly a battlefield. On the dusty library shelves, surrounded by musty files and town records, Sarah uncovered hints that the HOA had a dark reputation. Past residents had whispered about mysterious disappearances, unexplained property seizures, and an aggressive board that ruled the area with an iron fist. But details were scarce, buried under layers of official reports and bureaucratic jargon. One thing was clear. This was no ordinary homeowners association. The letter wasn't just a warning, it was a message, and Sarah was their target. That evening, as she returned to the cabin, the sun dipped behind the mountains, casting long shadows over the land. Sarah paused on the porch, scanning the tree line. A sudden rustle from the underbrush made her spin around. There, half hidden behind a tree, was a man, watching. His eyes gleamed with cold calculation. Sarah's breath caught. The man gave a slow, deliberate nod and vanished into the forest before she could call out. Fear and determination warred inside her. This was more than a simple zoning dispute. Someone wanted her gone, but Sarah wasn't about to run. Her mountain sanctuary had become a trap, and the fight to keep it was just beginning. Sarah sat at the rickety wooden table in her cabin, the fading light from the window casting long shadows across the scattered papers in front of her. The HOA's letter weighed heavily on her mind. but she refused to let panic win. If there was a legitimate zoning violation, she would find it and fix it. She opened the HOA bylaws she had downloaded from the county website. Page after page of dense legalese, packed with rules about fence heights, landscaping, and architectural styles. Nothing unusual. Nothing that applied to her cabin. Frustration bubbled beneath her calm exterior. She was about to set the papers aside when a folded, yellowed piece of paper slipped from between the pages. Curious, she unfolded it carefully. It was a copy of a contract dated decades ago, one she'd never seen before. It referenced something called Section 9, Clause 13, a buried clause that appeared to grant the HOA extraordinary powers over any new constructions or property transfers. Sarah's eyes scanned the fine print. It stated that any newcomer could be forced to vacate if deemed detrimental to the character or harmony of the neighborhood, and that the HOA board had sole discretion to enforce this clause. But there was no public record of this clause anywhere else, and no mention in the official bylaws she had reviewed. Sarah's heart raced. Had the HOA been hiding this clause all along? Why? Determined to find out, she pulled out her phone and started making calls, first to the county clerk, then to former residents of the area, anyone who might know about this secret rule. What she learned only deepened the mystery. The clause was part of an old private agreement signed years before the HOA was officially formed. It was never recorded publicly, meaning many residents, including Sarah, had been kept in the dark. More alarming was the timing. The clause had resurfaced only recently, exactly when Sarah had bought her cabin. It wasn't a coincidence. Later that day, Sarah drove down the winding mountain road to the town hall. The receptionist looked startled when she asked for historical HOA records, but eventually handed over a small box labeled confidential. In a dusty filing cabinet, Sarah sifted through stacks of yellowed documents. Suddenly, she noticed some pages were missing. Others had strange annotations in the margins. Dates crossed out, words rewritten in shaky handwriting. Her stomach churned. Someone had been altering official records to support their claim against her. Back in her cabin, Sarah tried to connect the dots. If the HOA was changing documents, threatening newcomers, and hiding clauses, what else were they hiding? Then her phone buzzed with a new message. "We know what you're doing. Stop digging or you'll regret it." The sender was anonymous. Fear slammed into her chest, but Sarah swallowed it down. Whoever was behind this wanted to scare her off, but she was too deep now, and she knew that the only way to win was to expose the truth. That night, as rain hammered the tin roof, Sarah sat by the flickering fireplace, her mind racing. The forest outside seemed darker, more oppressive. She couldn't shake the feeling she was being watched. Then, from the shadows near the window, a soft tapping again, like someone testing the glass. Sarah grabbed her flashlight and swung it toward the sound. Nothing. But when she looked down, she found a small, carved wooden token lying on the floor. A strange symbol she didn't recognize. Her blood ran cold. This was no ordinary warning. It was a message. Someone in this community was sending her a signal, either an enemy or a secret ally. Sarah's fingers tightened around the token. Whatever was coming next, she had to be ready. Because in this battle, over land and power, the truth was buried deep, and the stakes were higher than she ever imagined. The next morning, Sarah awoke with the carved wooden token still clutched in her hand. Its unfamiliar symbol gnawed at her curiosity, a riddle she had yet to solve. She knew that in this tangled web of secrecy, she couldn't fight the HOA alone. But who could she trust in this tight-knit mountain community that seemed to hide more than it revealed? She decided to visit her closest neighbor, an older woman named Martha, who lived 2 cabins down the ridge. Martha had greeted Sarah politely. The day she arrived but had kept her distance. Sarah hoped the elderly woman might know more about the HOA's shadowy dealings. Martha's cabin was small but well kept, smoke curling lazily from the chimney. When Sarah knocked, the door creaked open slowly. Martha's gray eyes sparkled, with a mixture of suspicion and something deeper, maybe fear. "I heard about the letter," Martha said softly, stepping aside to let Sarah in. "You're braver than most. They don't like outsiders here." Sarah settled into a worn armchair as Martha fetched 2 mugs of steaming tea. "What do you mean? Who's they?" Martha glanced over her shoulder before whispering, "The HOA board. They control everything, the land, the laws, the town council, and they don't hesitate to crush anyone who gets in their way." Sarah's pulse quickened. "I found a hidden clause in the bylaws, something they're using to push me out. And my car tires were slashed last night. I think they're trying to intimidate me." Martha nodded solemnly. "You're right to be careful, but you're not alone." She pulled an old folded map from her shawl. "Look here." The map detailed parcels of land surrounding their cabins, but several areas were marked with red crosses and names scratched out. They've been buying up property for years, sometimes through secret trusts, sometimes by forcing people to sell. And anyone who resists, they disappear from the records. Or worse. Her voice dropped to a whisper. A few neighbors who tried to fight back. They left town suddenly. No one knows why. Sarah's eyes widened. This was worse than she thought. The HOA wasn't just a petty neighborhood group. It was a shadowy power playing for control with ruthless tactics. "But why haven't others spoken up?" Sarah asked. Martha looked down, her fingers trembling. "Fear. And a few on the board keep the rest in line. People are scared of what they'll lose, or what they might face if they cross the wrong people." Just then, Sarah's phone buzzed. A new message. "Meet me at the old ranger station tonight. Alone. Come prepared." Martha's eyes widened. That's dangerous. But if someone's reaching out, it might be a chance. That night, under a sky thick with clouds, Sarah made her way to the abandoned ranger station deep in the woods, a place locals avoided after dark. The wind howled through broken windows as she pushed the door open. Inside, the air smelled of damp wood and forgotten memories. "Sarah," a voice whispered from the shadows. She turned sharply to see a man step forward, his face half hidden beneath a worn cap. His eyes were sharp and cautious. "I'm David," he said quickly. "I've been watching the HOA's moves for years. They're worse than you think. I work inside the town office. I've seen documents, contracts, payments, bribes." Sarah felt a surge of hope. "Why reach out to me?" "Because you have something they don't," David said. "Ownership. Property that could block their plans. And you're not afraid to fight back." He handed her a USB drive. "There's proof here, emails, contracts, recordings, showing the board's corruption. But be careful. They have eyes everywhere, and they won't stop until they've crushed anyone who stands in their way." Suddenly, a loud creak echoed from the back of the station. Both froze. "Someone's here," David hissed, moving toward the exit. "We have to get out. Now." Sarah's heart pounded as shadows flickered in the broken doorway. Footsteps approached. Without hesitation, David pulled a hidden side door open and they slipped into the thick forest. The cold night swallowed them whole. As they ran, Sarah realized one thing. This fight was no longer just about a cabin or property. It was about exposing a dangerous power network and surviving long enough to do it. The forest swallowed Sarah and David as they darted through tangled underbrush, branches clawing at their faces like desperate hands. The footsteps chasing them faded into the distance, but the chill in Sarah's bones told her they hadn't lost their pursuers entirely. Somewhere out there, the HOA's enforcers were lurking, watching, waiting. After what felt like hours, they reached a hidden clearing where David's old pickup was parked under a tarp. Sarah climbed in, breathing hard, heart pounding. "We can't." "Go to the sheriff," David said grimly as he started the engine. "He's on their payroll. The entire local government's compromised." Sarah swallowed. "Then where do we go?" David handed her a set of files, thick with deeds, contracts, and maps. "I pulled these from the town office yesterday. You own nearly all the land surrounding your cabin, through trusts registered in your family's name, but hidden behind layers of shell companies." Sarah blinked in disbelief. "I had no idea. I thought I just bought one cabin." David nodded. "That's exactly what they wanted you to think. The HOA has been quietly trying to seize your properties, but legally they can't touch land they don't own. They've been using intimidation and fake bylaws to scare you off, hoping you'll give up." The reality hit Sarah like a punch. She wasn't just a victim. She was a formidable obstacle standing in the way of their plans. David's eyes darkened. "But here's the problem. The HOA board members are well connected, with ties to state politicians, law enforcement, even the courts. They've been laundering money through real estate deals and bribing officials for years." Sarah flipped through the documents, finding names, dates, and sums of money that linked the HOA president, a man named Crawford, to multiple shell corporations and offshore accounts. "We need to get this evidence to someone who can help," Sarah said, her voice shaking with a mix of fear and determination. David shook his head. "Anyone outside this town is either bought or scared. We have to act carefully, or they'll bury us like the others." The weight of the threat pressed down on her. This wasn't just a fight for her cabin. It was a battle against a network of corruption that controlled the entire mountain community. Days later, Sarah sat in her cabin, poring over the files again when she noticed something odd. A folder labeled Crawford Personal. Inside were photos of Crawford meeting with shadowy figures late at night, secret contracts involving land deals, and a diary full of cryptic notes about removing obstacles and finalizing acquisitions. One entry caught Sarah's eye. "The new owner is unsettled. Plan in motion to intimidate and remove. Legal actions underway. Do not fail." Her blood ran cold. She was right in the crosshairs. That afternoon, Sarah went to confront the HOA president at his office, a large, modern building in the town center. She wasn't sure what she expected, a polite conversation, a warning, but when she arrived, the office was trashed, papers strewn everywhere, furniture overturned. On the desk, a single note written in red ink. "Back off, Sarah, this is bigger than you." The message was clear. They were scared of her and desperate. As she turned to leave, Sarah noticed a figure slipping out the back door. A young woman with anxious eyes. The woman hesitated, then called softly, "Sarah, wait. I can help you." Sarah's heart leapt. Could this be another ally or a trap? Before she could answer, the woman vanished into the alley. The game had changed. The HOA's web was larger, more dangerous, but Sarah now had a glimmer of hope. Someone from inside was ready to fight. But in this town, trust was a scarce commodity, and enemies lurked in every shadow. Sarah knew one thing for certain. If she was going to survive, she needed to be smarter, stronger, and ready for whatever came next. The alley was narrow, shadowed by towering buildings that seemed to lean in like silent watchers. Sarah stood frozen for a moment, her eyes searching for the young woman who had just vanished. She didn't know if this was a trap, but the desperation in the woman's eyes had been real. "Wait!" Sarah called softly, stepping forward. The woman reappeared from behind a dumpster, her dark hair tousled, eyes darting nervously. "You're braver than I expected," she whispered. "I'm Emily. I work inside the HOA's administration. I've seen what they're doing, but I've been too scared to speak out. Until now." Sarah's heart pounded. Finally, a glimmer of hope from within the enemy's ranks. "Why now?" Sarah asked, her voice cautious. Emily swallowed hard. "Because you're the only one who's fighting back. Everyone else just gives in or disappears. I've got information, proof of the board's illegal activities, but I can't share it at the HOA office. Too many eyes. Emily pulled a small flash drive from her jacket pocket and handed it to Sarah. This has documents, emails, and recordings, enough to bring the whole operation down if we get it to the right people. Sarah nodded, pocketing the drive. We have to be careful. The HOA's men are everywhere. How do I know I can trust you? Emily's eyes filled with pain. Because I've lost family to their greed. My uncle owned a cabin here, but he refused to sell. After that, he was gone. No one talked about it openly, but I know what happened. Sarah's breath caught. The stakes were even higher than she feared. All right, Sarah said quietly. We do this together, but we need a plan. Emily looked around nervously before pulling Sarah toward a nearby cafe. Inside, the low hum of conversation made it easier to talk without drawing attention. For hours, they mapped out their next moves. Emily revealed names of board members involved in bribery, intimidation tactics, and plans to seize more land under false pretenses. Sarah shared her knowledge of the hidden clause and her ownership of the surrounding land. We need a legal team, Emily said. Someone outside this corrupt town, someone who won't be bought. Sarah nodded. I know a lawyer in the city who specializes in land rights and corruption. I'll contact her first thing tomorrow. As they parted that night, Sarah felt a strange mixture of relief and anxiety. She wasn't alone anymore, but the enemy had grown stronger. Back at the cabin, she unpacked the flash drive and began reviewing its contents. The files were a damning web of lies, fraud, and manipulation. Names she recognized, phone calls recorded in secret, contracts forged to look official. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again. A text appeared from an unknown number. Stop this now, or you'll lose everything. We own the mountains. Sarah clenched her fists. The threat was clear and chilling. But instead of fear, a fierce determination surged through her. They thought they could scare her away. They were wrong. That night, as the wind howled outside, Sarah sat by the fireplace, planning her next move. The battle was no longer just for a cabin. It was for justice, truth, and survival. And she was ready to fight. The sun had barely risen when Sarah was already on the phone, scheduling a meeting with her lawyer, Allison, who specialized in exposing corruption and protecting property rights. Allison's calm but firm voice on the other end of the line gave Sarah a sliver of hope, a professional who wouldn't be intimidated by powerful interests. As Sarah hung up, a sudden knock at the door made her freeze. Her heart thudded every nerve alert. She peeked through the window. No one was there. When she opened the door, a small envelope lay on the doorstep. Inside was a single photograph, a picture of her cabin, taken from the forest edge. Someone was watching her. Someone close enough to know where she was. The note attached read, "We're always watching." Sarah's stomach twisted, but she refused to let fear rule her. She pocketed the photo and stepped outside, scanning the tree line. Nothing. Just the rustling leaves and distant bird calls. That afternoon, Allison arrived, a sharp woman in her early 40s with piercing eyes and a commanding presence. Sarah laid out the evidence, the secret clause, the shady contracts, the anonymous threats, and the flash drive Emily had given her. Allison studied the documents carefully. This is enough to start an investigation, but you need to be cautious. The HOA is more powerful than it appears. You're up against a system designed to protect them. Sarah nodded. I'm ready. Over the next few days, Allison helped Sarah file formal complaints with the state attorney's office and the real estate commission. They contacted investigative journalists, leaking just enough information to spark interest without exposing their sources. But the pushback was swift. One morning, Sarah's mailbox was filled with venomous letters, slanderous rumors spread by anonymous online posts, and a call to her phone with a distorted voice warning her to drop the fight before it's too late. Sarah's neighbors, once friendly or indifferent, started avoiding her. Some glared openly as she passed. The mountain town had turned cold. Then, Emily called in a panic. "They know about me," she whispered over the phone. "Someone followed me home last night. I'm scared." Sarah's chest tightened. "We'll figure this out. You're not alone." Together, they devised a plan to protect Emily, moving her to a safe house out of town while continuing their investigation from a distance. One evening, as Sarah returned to her cabin, she noticed fresh tire tracks in the dirt driveway, not her own. Her heart sank. Inside, the cabin was untouched, but the sense of intrusion was unmistakable. Suddenly, she heard a faint creak from upstairs. Slowly, she climbed the stairs, each step echoing in the quiet house. In her bedroom stood a figure. Tall, cloaked in shadow. "Who's there?" Sarah demanded, voice steady despite the adrenaline. The figure stepped forward. It was David, her ally from the ranger station. "I'm sorry for sneaking in," he said, breathing heavily. "They're closing in faster than we thought. We need to move." Before she could ask questions, the sound of engines roared outside. Sarah peered out the window, black SUVs crawling up the mountain road. "They're coming for you," David said grimly. Sarah's mind raced. There was no time to pack or plan. They had to act now. Grabbing the files and the flash drive, Sarah and David slipped out the back door into the woods. The night swallowed them once again. With every rustle and snap, the danger tightened like a noose. Sarah realized the fight was no longer just about land or law. It was a battle for survival and the truth. The night air was thick with tension as Sarah and David plunged deeper into the dense forest. Branches tore at their clothes and faces, but neither dared slow down. Behind them, the low growl of engines and the flash of headlights painted the trees in eerie, chasing bursts of light. David's breath came in harsh gasps. "They're not giving up. This is more than a warning now. They want you gone, for good." Sarah's mind raced. She clutched the flash drive and the folder of evidence tightly. This wasn't just about a cabin or property anymore. It was a battle against a dark machine of power, corruption, and silence. Suddenly, David held up a hand, signaling to stop. Up ahead, a narrow ridge opened into a small clearing. "We can't outrun them forever," he said. "We need a plan." Sarah scanned the shadows, then spotted a thin wire stretched across a path almost invisible in the dark. "An old trap line," David whispered, "used to keep unwanted visitors away. If we can lead their vehicles into it, we might slow them down." Sarah nodded grimly. "Let's do it." They moved silently, baiting the pursuers deeper into the wilderness. The SUVs followed relentlessly, engines roaring louder. At the last moment, David cut the wire with a sharp snap. Two of the SUVs hit the makeshift trap, flipping violently into ditches on either side of the trail. The sudden crash echoed through the valley, but it bought them. "Precious minutes. We have to keep moving," Sarah urged. "We can't stop until we're safe." Hours later, they reached an abandoned fire lookout tower perched on a rocky outcrop overlooking the valley. The structure was shaky, but still stood tall, a perfect vantage point. Sarah climbed the rusted ladder, heart pounding as she peered. Through the cracked windows, below the town was dark and quiet. The storm had passed, for now. David handed her a portable radio. "I called Allison. She's arranged a meeting with a state investigator tomorrow. But we need to survive until then." As Sarah settled into the lookout, exhaustion clawed at her. The fight had pushed her beyond every limit, but she refused to surrender. Then, a faint crackle came through the radio. "Sarah, this is Allison. We've got a leak. Crawford knows about the evidence. He's planning to sabotage the hearing. You need to be careful." Sarah's blood ran cold. The HOA president wasn't just powerful, he was ruthless. That night, Sarah dreamt of fire and shadows, of cabins burning and neighbors disappearing, but she also saw a light, her family's land, her legacy, and the truth breaking free. Morning came with a heavy silence. Sarah and David packed their few belongings, ready to meet Allison and the investigator. But as they descended the tower, movement in the trees caught Sarah's eye. A figure stepped forward, slow, deliberate. It was Emily. Her face was pale but determined. "I made it out," she said, "and I brought something." Emily handed Sarah a battered envelope. Inside were dozens of photos, meetings, handshakes, bribes, irrefutable proof of the HOA's corruption. "We're not alone," Emily whispered. "There are more people tired of living in fear." Together, the three of them headed toward town, ready to confront the darkness. But deep in Crawford's office, the phone rang. He smiled coldly. "They're coming," he said. "Make sure this ends tonight." The crisp morning air held a tense stillness as Sarah, David, and Emily made their way back into town. The weight of the evidence in their hands felt heavier than ever, but it was the burden they needed to carry if they were to topple the corrupt HOA. The courthouse was an old stone building, imposing and cold. Inside, Allison and the state investigator waited, their faces grim but resolute. "We have what we need to start an official inquiry," Allison said. "But the real fight begins when the HOA board tries to block the investigation." Sarah's heart raced. She could almost feel Crawford's eyes watching from the shadows. The hearing began that afternoon. Sarah sat at the front, clutching the flash drive and the photos Emily had brought. Allison presented the evidence with precision: contracts forged, threats made, property stolen through deception. The room buzzed with murmurs as the weight of the corruption was laid bare. Crawford sat at the back, his face a mask of controlled rage. Then, the unexpected happened. The doors burst open. Crowd of townspeople flooded the courtroom, neighbors, some of whom Sarah had thought were too scared to stand up. They carried signs, whispered accusations, and a collective anger that was palpable. One by one, voices rose against the HOA's reign of terror. Among them was Martha, the elderly neighbor who had first warned Sarah. Her voice cracked but was strong. "We've lived in fear for too long. It's time to take back our homes, our lives." Crawford's expression faltered as the tide turned against him. But just when it seemed the truth would prevail, a court clerk stepped forward with a sealed envelope. "Allison, this just arrived from the state attorney's office," the clerk announced. Allison opened it carefully and frowned. "This is an order to dismiss the case. The evidence has been declared inadmissible due to procedural errors." A hush fell over the courtroom. Sarah's heart sank. Was this the end? Had the HOA won? But then, David whispered in her ear, "There's more." He handed Allison a small USB drive she hadn't seen before. "This contains backups, emails, and recordings proving the dismissal order was forged by Crawford's allies." Allison's eyes widened. "This changes everything." Suddenly, the courtroom door slammed open again. This time, uniformed state police officers entered, led by an unyielding-looking officer. "We're here to place the HOA board under arrest," he announced. "An independent task force has been investigating for months. The evidence against them is overwhelming." Crawford's face went pale. He was handcuffed and led away, his power unraveling in front of the entire town. Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. The nightmare was finally over. But just as she was about to breathe easy, Allison pulled her aside. "There's one last thing," Allison said quietly. "This investigation revealed something unusual about your property titles." Sarah blinked. "You don't just own the surrounding land. You have legal claim to the entire valley, thanks to an old family trust set up generations ago." Sarah's mind reeled. I checked with the state archives. No one else holds title to this land. It's all yours." Her eyes widened. She owned not just her cabin, but everything. The mountains, the forests, the streams, a power she hadn't even known she held. That explained the HOA's desperation. They hadn't just wanted to intimidate her, they wanted total control. Sarah smiled, the weight of the fight lifting. Her cabin was hers. But now, so was the land around it. She had reclaimed her home, her legacy, and her future. The town was hers to protect, and this time no one would ever take it away.